Hey guys, we're so excited to be back before you. We have a very exciting show. Again, we're two immigration lawyers here to discuss some major updates with US immigration laws and policies. It seems like everything has changed since the last time that the two of us sat down and spoke about pressing issues that our country is facing. I'm so excited to have with me my guest, attorney Remzi Kulen. Remzi, how are you? And welcome back to McBean Immigration TV.
Thank you so much, LaToya. It's so good to be back, and it's unbelievable how much has changed since we last spoke. We were going through the list of things that we can speak today, and we even forgot to include a few items that we have to revisit and include in the list. It's very exciting times, yes, and I'm so glad to be back.
So the last time we spoke was in February, and it was shortly after President Trump took office. And already in the very beginning, there was a laundry list of changes and issues that we addressed. And today, I know that we're trying to keep this one a little shorter, but we still have a lot to get through. So let's just dive right in. The travel ban. Let's talk about the travel ban.
It's one of the things that we were expecting to happen very quickly, but as you know, it didn't happen very quickly. It happened very late, actually. And it didn't happen with as many countries as we were thinking that it was going to happen. It's, I think, 12 countries that are really banned, and then 7 countries with some restrictions. And I just read something in AILA, Immigration Lawyers Association website, that Trump may be adding more to those countries right now. So what do you think about that?
It's awful. And I reported out on the expansion, the soon to be 36 countries, right, are on some expanded lists. And many of them are African countries. I believe 25 out of the 36 are African countries, including countries like Nigeria, Cameroon, and some other countries. And even some Caribbean countries are part of this new list, although we don't fully know the extent of what the suspension will actually look like. We do know, based on a memo that Secretary of State Marco Rubio signed, indicating that these countries will have 60 days by which to address some new benchmarks that the State Department is placing on them in terms of how they are vetting applicants for a visa and their visa overstay rate and some other security concerns that the State Department cited. But here's what I found interesting. I found it interesting that the State Department has also said, well, if you guys will agree to do a third country agreement with the United States to accept folks who we're trying to deport, but their country will not take them back, if you guys will allow us to have that kind of agreement with you so that we could send some of these foreigners or deportees to your country, we'll take you off this travel ban list. I was shocked by that.
It seems like bargaining. It's not like we didn't have these checks and security clearances before. We had it, but this administration thinks that there needs to be more check. But then they go out and say something like this. It's almost as if they're negotiating everything. That's what it feels like.
Absolutely. I mean, everything is up for negotiation, apparently, with this administration. But at the end of the day, the way that I view this, we're talking about people's lives here, right? Should they be used in this manner as some sort of bargaining chip? I think it's really disgraceful and a little quite upsetting, I should say, but we'll see how things will play out with the expanded 36 countries to the travel ban list. Are any of your clients impacted by the travel ban that's already in place?
Not really. I have a few clients from Turkmenistan that are really feeling the pressure right now. However, not really. I mean, we're advising them not to travel if it's not necessary. So I didn't have any problems yet. How about yours?
A lot of what we're seeing has to do more so with the fears of either leaving the United States as a green card holder or even as a U.S. citizen and traveling to one of the travel ban countries, and less so on the side of someone in one of these countries trying to get in. It has been pretty quiet on that side of things, but it is, it's still early, certainly.
It is very early, yes. The thing that I don't like about it is it's very unpredictable, and it puts a lot of fear in people, and they can travel, but they don't want to travel because of this fear when they can actually travel. So I was at a networking meeting the other day, and the other attorneys asked me how my days were going the last 6 months. And I said, I think I'm being a psychologist more than a lawyer. because
Right.
that's what we need to do, to talk to clients and calm them down and tell them that, especially for once in the business world, that things are still going okay, but it's hard to make people believe nowadays because all they see in the news and the social media are bad things.
Exactly. And speaking of bad things that people are seeing, let's talk about ICE, right? Because you can't go on TikTok, you can't go on YouTube, you can't go on Instagram, you can't go on any form of social media without seeing an ICE video, right? A video of ICE either on the street, breaking into someone's car, or maybe at a farm or gas station or car wash. Recently, I saw a video of them running some of the workers down. It's been so widespread and really quite disturbing what we're seeing with ICE enforcement.
Yes, I was at a hearing in
Mm-hmm.
Newark, New
Mm-hmm.
Jersey
Mm-hmm.
on Tuesday. And as I was expecting to be called out, I saw some ICE agents. I think I saw 3 of them
Mm-hmm.
running around with a list of people, and they were going to the court officers and they were asking about these names. Did they show up? Did they show up? I didn't like what I saw. It didn't feel safe at all. And these people, mind you, are in their proceedings. They're coming
Right.
to court
Right.
to represent their rights. They have a lawyer sometimes. Sometimes they don't have a lawyer, but they are in proceedings. There is no judge order to remove these people. So while this is going on, this legal proceeding is going on, agents show up to remove these people from courtrooms. I haven't seen it before with my eyes, but I saw it on Tuesday in Newark that the ICE agents were actually looking for immigrants who have proceedings at the court to basically arrest them.
It truly is disturbing. And a lot of that is actually happening also in Manhattan at 26 Federal Plaza, where they're showing up and they're just taking people out. The videos that I've seen, now this hasn't happened to any of our clients directly, aside from, actually, let me just take that back, aside from those who showed up at court without an attorney and were arrested and their loved one contacted us and we had to quickly do an emergency consultation and get to work immediately to try to locate that individual. We do have a couple of those individuals on our docket, but none of our clients who we have actually brought to court with us or anyone on our docket who had a hearing had actually faced that circumstance quite yet, but it is quite widespread right now in Manhattan. And so for us, we've been doing a lot of requests for a WebEx hearing because we know what's going on now. Even those who have been in the country longer than 2 years, according to AILA, could potentially be at risk for such an enforcement activity or action if they had entered with one of those Biden parole programs or CBP1 app. They're at risk potentially of having their removal case cut short by the dismissal process and then being arrested and then, more alarmingly, being placed in expedited removal, fast track deportation, because certainly that's the intention here, is to shift a large number of individuals into this expedited process. So it's really disturbing and it's shaking some things up at our firm because now we have to shift things around a little bit to address these urgent needs of folks who are being deprived of their due process rights.
But isn't it better, as far as government resources are concerned, for ICE agents to go out and find out people who are not in proceedings, who are actually roaming around? But these people are already brought to justice and they have to see a judge, they have to go through these proceedings. Why don't you go out and find out the people who are not in proceedings, who are in shadows and who have criminal backgrounds? I think that should be the priority. But
I think, to answer that question, my theory is this. They have a 3,000 arrests per day quota that they've got to meet. Whether they're going to meet it from arresting folks on the street or in immigration court, I don't think they care anymore. I think they are just looking at meeting that new quota. And I think that's what's really driving all of this, because like you said, it really doesn't make sense that they would target people who are already in the system going through the process. But again, I think the reason they're doing that is so that they could deport them right away, literally right away, which is really quite disturbing.
So related to that also, we now see that USCIS is sometimes coordinating with ICE to arrest clients during the interviews at USCIS buildings. So what do you think about that? Have you seen any of that? LaToya?
First of all, none of our clients have been arrested, okay? But what I have seen through other attorneys and, of course, through social media and from USCIS directly, because USCIS has been tweeting about their law enforcement activities, USCIS is actively engaged in looking at applications, looking at denials, past denials, looking at folks' history to determine who has fraud on their record or a criminal issue and whether or not those individuals are going to be coming in for an interview. And if they are coming in for an interview, for some of them, they are actually coordinating with ICE to have them arrested. And USCIS reported out on this just recently, like interviews involving naturalization applications or even the green card application. They're setting these folks up to be arrested by ICE, which I think is having a chilling effect, right? I mean, if you see something like that going on, it would be reasonable to think, is now the right time for me to move forward with an immigration case, right? I mean, that's what some people have been asking me. And I tell them, if you have a way forward, pursue it cautiously with some good legal help. And certainly if you don't have anything on your record of concern, then absolutely chart ahead, apply for citizenship, do what you've got to do to obtain your lawful status.
I think the preventive lawyering has become more and more important these days. Before you do something, consult with an attorney. Whereas you do something, you have a problem, and then you go to attorney. Those days are over. You need to take it very seriously. Talk with an attorney. Don't think that just because it happened to your friend, it can happen to you. Things may have different results. Everybody's case is different. So if you have something like that, you need to talk with an attorney even before applying for anything. What we were concerned about was, I have no clients who were arrested by ICE in USCIS interviews. We were concerned about a client who we didn't know had a criminal background. And then he disclosed it after we filed the case, actually, when they called him for an interview. The case filed by his US citizen son. So, I mean, those usually are granted interview waivers and there's no interview. So we were like, why is this guy getting an interview? And then we realized, oh, there's these few things that I mentioned you. And then it turns out this person has a criminal background in his home country. And he thought that he should have mentioned it because few of them he was acquitted, few of them are still pending, like 6, 7 different things, right?
Whoa, that's a list.
So we were concerned that he would be arrested during the interview. So he wasn't arrested. And I checked with local AILA council on whether if there is any arrest that they know in the local USCIS office during the interviews. They said, no, we haven't heard anything. So this is not an immigration violation. Again, I mean, if it's an immigration violation, USCIS already knows about it. Maybe ICE knows about it, but there's no immigration violation. There's just criminal background in client's history. So I just want to say I saw a few cases like that and the clients were not arrested. That doesn't mean they're not going to be arrested, but that's the current situation we have right now.
And certainly for us, like you, we work on complex immigration cases involving people who have a criminal record. And for some others, they have fraud and misrepresentation and other inadmissibility problems on their record, which is why they need an attorney. And we haven't seen a move of adverse findings, so to speak, or determinations in a very widespread way. But what we have been seeing, though, is folks who are going through a removal of conditions process, the I-751. Actually, that's the one group of individuals where we are seeing some USCIS action. We've been getting calls from some clients who are saying that they've received an NTA, a notice to appear in immigration court. And for some of them, it's because their I-751 case was filed late. They came to us after they went out of status and their case had to be filed late. And then they got back in status. Vast majority of our clients, they're still going through their 751 removal of conditions process. They're being interviewed and they're getting their approval for their 10-year green card and all is well. But we have seen a few people be NTA'd because at one point or another, before coming to us, they went out of status. Have you been seeing anything like that with the removal of conditions cases?
Because I don't think I'm doing those complex cases like you do, where people have criminal backgrounds or immigration violations in the past. My cases are more like on the business side. But I've seen an interesting case where the US citizen spouse filed for an I-130 and 485, then decided that she doesn't want to go with the application because they broke up, and she withdrew the I-130 and he withdrew the I-5. And instead of closing the case, USCIS issued an NTA.
Yeah.
So I haven't seen that before. Like if you withdraw an I-485, then they close the case and they leave you with it, and it's whatever your status is. But this time there was an NTA, and I think it has to do with this administration's approach to withdrawn 485s.
And the last time we met, actually, in February, we talked about that new NTA policy, the fact that once USCIS denies a case, if they find fraud or criminal history or something adverse, they will place that individual in removal. And at the time, I think the both of us expressed a little bit of skepticism in terms of how they're actually going to carry this out. Now, actually, it sounds like they are carrying this out, even in cases that do not involve a criminal record or even in fraud, but it's just a flat out denial. One interesting thing that we've seen recently involves a woman whose I-485 was denied back in 2019. And she hadn't done anything else with immigration since then. And then out of the blue, just about a month or two ago, she gets a notice to appear in immigration court, just out of the blue. We didn't work on her green card case. She thought, okay, they denied me. I don't have a way forward. So she just didn't do anything else. And then out of the blue, they sent her a notice to appear. And then she contacted us for the first time to help her. So USCIS, I think they're starting to look back on some of those older cases, and they're issuing these NTAs. Although USCIS is doing a lot of weird things these days, they're actually doing some things right, because I don't know if you're also seeing this, Remzi, but we're starting to see some very, very fast approvals for naturalization and even marriage green card cases, really fast. You as well?
Yes, definitely. I've seen a few naturalization approvals within 3 to 4 months. I've seen a few marriage cases which got approved or got an interview within 2 to 4 months. This is quite surprising, actually, because it's against, I think, anything we said.
I think some days still say that, expect that things will take a very long time. But then I'm starting to really see these fast approvals come in. And it's nice to have, but it's just mind blowing, right?
You know what it is? I think it's also very unpredictable. For example, when you file a case and when you think that you're going to have 8 months to get an interview or an RFE or an approval, you instruct the client in a certain way. In the next 8 months, do this, do that, continue doing this, etc. And then all of a sudden you get an interview within 2 months. And then the client goes, didn't you say we were to do it?
In that instance, a client cannot be upset with you about your advice, right?
But there's no way you can be a good attorney these days. I mean, everything we say, it's either, it happens either before or after. It's so hard to predict the timeframes these days. Another thing that USCIS did correctly, at least for our office lately, was we had a change of status from B2 to F1, which we filed 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. We received the receipt notice, but not the RFE, not us, not the client. And then we received the denial notice saying you didn't respond to the RFE. So we filed a motion saying we did receive decision, but not the RFE. And the motion was denied. They said, how come you can receive denial notice and not the RFE? They didn't believe us. So we filed another motion. And then I got the senators and Congress people involved in this. And USCIS took an action because they realized that we were right. And they actually reopened the case, issued an RFE. We responded to the RFE. And the case was approved 2 years after the original filing date. So if you can get their attention somehow, we used senators to do that this time. They actually do the right thing. It's so hard to get the attention. That's the problem. But I just want to plug it in to say that they're also doing good things and right things.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And the people at USCIS who are actually reviewing the work and doing the actual work, I mean, they haven't really changed, right? The policy leadership has changed, obviously, but those who are doing the work, they're still using their discretion. They're still following policy. They're still following the law, the rules, and they're approving cases. Things are still moving. with immigration and USCIS, for the most part, the workers, they're still doing their job and getting it done. That's a terrific story. Now, let's just switch gears for a moment and talk about students. I don't know if you've heard the news that for a brief time, student visa interviews were suspended because the government wanted to put in place some social media protocols and things in place at U.S. embassies and consulates across the globe to really check folks' social media to determine whether they have any anti-American or even anti-Semitic post and language and such. And just today, I learned the news that they've started to call folks back in for an interview so students can get their appointments, but now with the caveat that they're going to have to unlock all of their social media platforms and make them public so that U.S. embassies and consulates can review their social media content. What do you think about that?
It is interesting. And I thought when everybody asked me about this, the students cannot get a visa anymore. What are we going to do about this? I said, don't worry about it. This is not going to take long because USCIS cannot live without foreign students. That's a fact. It's a huge business.
Yeah.
It's not only a business, it's also how US gets its talent. It is so unfortunate that we still don't have an entrepreneur visa after all of these years.
Right.
Students come to US, they get their OPTs. And now USCIS for the first time opened up the H-1B application for self-sponsored companies for the first time this year. So these are all good things. Now, in retrospect, how F-1 visa applications will be affected by this, I don't think they're only after anti-terrorist or anti-Semitic. I think they're also after people who are violating their status in the US. That's my thing. I mean, I haven't heard anything, but let's say you have a social media account and you're sharing everything like the new generation does, then you somehow this is something that violates your status in the US and you have a photo of it. You shared it in your Instagram account. If it's still there and if you opened up your account, they will see it and maybe not issue you the visa because of your prior violation. So I think there's a lot of things that needs to be taken into account. And what you share and what you don't share, what you do and what you don't do is going to become more important. And this will probably affect people in the sense that they will try to maintain their statuses even more properly. I don't even want to talk about freedom of expression, how you can express yourself. That's also legal, but I think it has less to do with immigration law. But if you want to get a visa, if you want to apply for a visa, you just have to be careful about what you share and what you do. I think that's how I look at it.
Yeah, it goes to your intent, right? Whenever you think about a visa, applying for a visa to come to the United States, whether it's as a student or a visitor or a business person or whatever the purpose is, think about the fact that the embassy is going to drill down on your intent. And so now they're saying, well, one of the ways that we could figure out what your intentions are is to look at your social media to see how you think about controversial world news, right? Involving the US and the US culture. Are you critical of us? I think it's a dangerous place to go for the government because, what standards are they actually using to determine what is considered anti-Americanism? What does that look like? Because the way that I view things, if they could say to a foreigner who is going through a visa application process that they are engaged in anti-American sentiments and such, and therefore you're not going to get that visa, well, they could hold the same standard against us, against anyone here in the US who had either been naturalized or for a US born citizen. I think that it's a slippery slope and that freedom to express oneself is really important. And I think obviously there's a line that needs to be drawn in terms of how far they could actually go with their scrutiny of these applicants and their intent. As a student, the intention should very well just be, I'm going to go to the United States to study and get my degree. And that's it. Whatever scrutiny that the embassy puts out there to make that determination should focus on school, educational attainment. Should politics play such a big role? Well, maybe if a person has been a member of like the Taliban or a terrorist group or some group that's terrorizing other people so I think there's a fine line that needs to be drawn.
Exactly. We'll see how it plays out. And
Yeah.
we'll have more to talk about it in the next podcast. But let's switch gears one more time and let's talk about the business community. So Trump actually has Elon Musk on his side all along. And then we thought it would be good for the business community. And now Elon Musk left the Trump administration. And there's a lot of talk about how this may affect the business world, business immigration visas. Any thoughts on that, LaToya?
Yeah, absolutely. The Elon effect. I think we're going to walk into what that Elon effect actually looks like from the standpoint of the fact that he was at the White House for 6 months, something incredibly brief. And a whole lot of pressure really wasn't placed on the business community as far as immigration crackdown is concerned. Yes, for a brief period of time, folks with H-1B visa, some people received an RFE telling them that there's some adverse finding on their immigration record and that they need to go do biometrics, but then they didn't know what USCIS was talking about. It was kind of a weird thing that happened. And so that happened, but not a whole lot of things happened on the employment green card side or the visa side of things. And so with this Elon effect now kind of holding things off until he left the White House, not only did he leave the White House, but they hate each other now, right? They hate each other now. And so now I really think that we're going to see more worksite raids. We'll see more restrictions. We've already seen restrictions placed on foreign students and visa revocations and other things happening with students. And now the travel bans, of course. And then I think eventually, from a policy standpoint, I think they're going to try to really play around with some things to make it more difficult to hire foreign workers. What do you think?
Well, I look at this relationship and I always think about very short-lived celebrity marriages. You know how they get married and then they get divorced in 2 months, 3 months. Who knows what happened? I think one of the reasons the H-1Bs didn't get hurt during all of this time, there were no adverse regulations, was because maybe Elon Musk was telling Trump that H-1B is important. That's what they've been telling us all along. And so we'll see. I mean, I haven't seen anything bad happening on the H-1B side since Trump took office, but we're just filing the H-1B quota applications right now. June 30th is the deadline. I really want to see how these H-1B applications will be received by USCIS and how they will be adjudicated. I think that's going to be a big test as to how this is going to go. As far as the other rules and regulations are concerned on the business immigration side, everything seems to be the same. We are having a lot of difficulty in getting non-immigrant visa interviews for business owners in overseas at the consulates. That may have to do with having less employees or firing employees from the US consulates, because as you know, the Department of State sent a memo asking for the consulates, how many people do you need to do your job at a minimum level? So maybe it's the effect of that. We don't know, but it's taking significantly a longer time to get those non-immigrant visa interviews for workers, which is LEs, especially E2s. So that's on the one side.
Which countries are you primarily seeing this slowdown with?
I'm seeing a lot of slowdown in Azerbaijan and Turkey, for example. They actually went into a new interview system and everything is very complicated right now. This transition is not being handled very well and we'll see how it goes. Also wanted to touch upon Trump's gold card. Did you see the news? That he said, first of all, that the applications are open. If you go to the website, it's just a waiting list.
Right. That's all that it is. Just a waiting list.
Yes.
And I'd still like to know what the criteria is. Aside from $5 million, right? What else? What other criteria are they going to care?
They said it's on the works, but now here's the big caveat. He said it's not going to give citizenship. It's going to give a pathway to citizenship, whatever that means. And he said he's not seeking Congress approval. So he's trying to going to do this with an executive order, I guess. And how can you have a path to naturalization with an executive order? I cannot, wrap my hand around this. I don't know how this is going to happen. Every time he speaks about this, it makes it more complicated.
Yeah, it seems so bizarre because there's the INA, right? The laws that Congress wrote that tells us exactly who is eligible for permanent residency here in the United States and what criteria should be used and categories and allocation of visa availability and all of that. And now here we're going to potentially have an executive order that circumvents the INA, the laws, and creates some other criteria that grants such an exclusive privilege an exclusive pathway to individuals to be able to travel in the United States, in and out of the United States, have residency here, have all the rights and privileges. It's very bizarre. Are you on the waiting list? Did you sign up? I haven't signed up yet, but I will. I'm going to get on that waiting list. Let's get on it. Let's see what the rollout will look like. I'm going to get on that list.
Yeah, a second time citizenship, a US citizenship. I've never thought about that, but yes, maybe that's
It's just an email list. That's all
Yes.
that it is. We're going to probably get on his other email list.
Yeah, we can do it. So we talked about a lot of issues, and it seems very interesting these days. Maybe we should do this more often, LaToya. Your insights were great. Thank you so much for your time. And I'm glad we were able to do this on a rainy New York afternoon in our offices.
Thank you for being here again. It's always a pleasure touching base with you. And what I really liked about today's episode is the fact that we shared what we're seeing, right? Which I think our audience will find valuable to know exactly what we're seeing in our day-to-day practice. So let's do this again very soon. Guys, thanks so much for joining us. Be sure to share your thoughts below and follow, subscribe, and stay plugged into what the both of us are doing. As you guys can see, we're staying in touch with everything that's happening with immigration these days. So follow us for more information. Thanks so much for being with us, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.
See you. Bye.
Bye, Remzi.
Bye, LaToya.